and early voting has been going well. And that was some pretty exciting news. I think that's a help during this pandemic. Schools were meeting this week to discuss some of the tipping points that they would look at if we did have a significant increase in COVID cases. And there was obviously a lot of planning and discussion around Halloween events for this weekend. So everything from the library to the schools to Carlisle's fantastic plan put together by the Carlisle Cheer Committee to ensure that Halloween goes off safely, without a hitch, and with an eye towards a lot of fun. So if I could leave everybody with one closing thought, I said, if you have not seen the Carlisle Cheer Committee's website and the organization involved in trick-or-treating, please take a look at that. It's a great plan. There are still some spots open, some neighborhoods that are still taking guests. And I have the assurance, or we all have the assurance of Carlisle Cheer, that if we'll meet everyone's needs, we'll make sure that every family in Carlisle has an opportunity to have some fun on Halloween. With that, Dr. Lewis, if any of the members of the board or anyone has any questions, glad to field them.
Oh, I would like to say that the swap meet on Saturday went off beautifully well. So thanks to the cheer committee, who did a fantastic job on that. And if Halloween stacks up to their usual competence, we'll have a great Halloween. So looks like it could be a great success. So thank you. That's no questions here. Anybody else have questions?
I'd just like to add two quick things. One, just in case anybody's listening that wants to still sign up, is that it is a 3 to 6 p.m. trick-or-treating time on Saturday. And this is a plan that, went through review by the Board of Health and the local emergency preparedness committee and lots of others. And we determined that a daytime event in the afternoon ending promptly at 6 was both a really safe way to do it and also would still allow for, lots of fun trick-or-treating. So I just want to put that out there. And I would like to maybe for parents that are listening that have teenagers to be sure they know that they are more than welcome to trick or treat in the neighborhood, and go on to that Sign Up Genius at the Cheer Project and pick a time that you want to go out in the neighborhood, but that we are asking everybody to stop their trick or treating promptly at 6 p.m. And the other comment I want to make is just back to the new COVID cases, and just to mention, along with what the chief said, that thanks to the Board of Health nurse, the contact tracing has been done, for the family, the household, and that's all completed. And then the one other individual, that tracing, I think, was completed today. So that's been done and taken care of in a great, in a very prompt and thorough way.
Thank you, Barney. Yeah, that's again, reiterating, again, Halloween is for Carlisle residents. And we ask everybody to please be done by 6 o'clock in the evening so we can have a safe and happy Halloween. So thank you. Any other questions or comments for the LEPC? Hearing none. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate your efforts as usual. It's a fantastic time. The LEPC, was normally set up to handle storms and a 24-hour emergency when trees fell across people's yards and that sort of thing, and getting the ambulances out. Nobody had ever anticipated we would be going on for 8 months, but here we are. And Chief Fisher's done a wonderful job of leading that effort. So thank you. All right, Recreation Commission. Who is presenting for that?
I think Courtney's on the call, I know.
Hi there.
Drew
There's
McMurrow.
both of us, Courtney and myself.
All right, go right ahead.
Thank you, Alan, for having us. We'll try and be swift with this presentation. I do notice that Dave Modell and Luke are not here, but they're actually the two that have been well informed. David had attended a different presentation.
David has been on the call, has been on
He-
the meeting.
He
Yep.
is, yeah.
I'm
Great.
here. I'm here. I'm
Oh, there
here.
you are. How are you?
I'm listening. No, I'm well familiar with the presentation. Thank you.
Good. Do I need to share my screen, or should I rely on you to just thumb through the
You-
meeting packet materials?
You're certainly welcome to.
Yeah, you should be able to do that. You should be able to share your materials.
Let me go ahead and do that. Just make sure I pick the right one. Okay, great. And I will take this through about half this presentation and then hand it off to Courtney. So we're the Carlisle Recreation Commission, which you probably recall. You know, we serve at your leisure. We're essentially a board that's appointed by you and reports to you. And we're here to present about our proposal for a dog park to apply for a grant for a dog park. So a dog park, what is a dog park? It's it's essentially a fenced-in area, often with a path or other amenities, and it can range from elaborate infrastructure to very sparse and natural. There are many of them in Massachusetts. So why are we proposing a dog park? Well, Carlisle has a lot of dogs. I think 460 something was the number we got in the winter from the town clerk. That's even more than we have school children, I believe, in Carlisle. And a dog park makes both the dogs and their owners very happy. One of the reasons in the Recreation Commission that it fits so well for our purpose is we're often seeking multi-generational recreational amenities and opportunities because much of our recreation programming and infrastructure is really focused on youth and the most active communities. And the dog park presents something that can go up and down the generational spectrum. Another reason is we also have a little bit of a problem over at Banta Davis with what we are maintaining in terms of our fields, with dogs, for lack of a better word, pooping or digging up baselines or being a little bit of a nuisance to our field infrastructure, because owners need a place to go with them, a place where they can let them go off leash. And so this is a little bit of an opportunity for us to steer the activity away from problems that we've had, soccer players getting dog waste on themselves and baselines and other infrastructure getting torn up by dogs. And one question I get a lot when I give this presentation is, Carlisle has vast open spaces and tons of trails and so forth. So why would we need a dog park in a place that has so much open space? And the reasons are, we have a dog. I was part of the dog bylaw committee, and we spent a lot of time talking about the leash laws and whether or not we would have a leash law. As you recall, we ended up with a rule that basically requires dogs to be on call and basically responding to a recall command. But not all dogs are well enough trained for that in town. So this allows a place for dog owners to take their dogs and allow them to be off leash and to conform to the rules. It helps people train their dogs for recall and socialize their dogs to other dogs. It helps owners who have over energetic dogs who they can't really take on the trails or maybe can't do enough hiking to keep active. It helps our less able dog owners. Not every dog owner is able to hike miles of rugged trails with a dog. And it helps, for those that have dogs during the winter to exercise and care for those dogs. So lots of reasons why we favor putting together a dog park. Where we plan to do it is at Banta Davis. And there's a little bit of a picture here. We have land that is a great fit for this already. It was vetted as good land for field construction back when the proposal to expand the field infrastructure got narrowly voted down. I think that was in 2004. But during that, the land was assessed as having no ledge and fairly level and good drainage and an excellent location for a future field, but we're proposing it for a dog park. This is an area that is close to or adjacent to, and I'll have another picture that describes it better, but basically down on the third base line of the softball field, that is at Upper Banta. A place where there are really no abutters, there's good parking. It's close to where we have the problems with dog owners allowing their dogs to go now. The fields that are being affected by disobedient dogs. It's a good amenity there for parents who find themselves at a soccer or softball game. Maybe a sibling is going to go and play with the dogs. It's a good community infrastructure and gathering place already. And it's also a good spot in the sense that Banta is often thought of as a place for maybe a future school expansion or a site for, because there's very little municipal land in Carlisle that could be used. And a dog park is not a huge investment. It's not something that couldn't be relocated if we needed to do a future school or there was some other use of Banta that could be called upon for. So just more specifically, more detailed view of where we would have it. You can see, and if you can see my cursor, here is the softball field. Here's the parking lot. There's a volleyball court here. This rendering was done by a friend of mine at Fisher Design Group. He did a lot of the work at the high school athletic complex, Dave Fisher. The dog parks typically have a large dog area and a small dog area. And the way that he drew it in this rendering, the large dog park rendering is here, which you can see is smaller than a softball field, but maybe 2/3 the size of that, and then a small dog area, which is probably about, or would be about half that. I think it's drawn here, perhaps a bit bigger than it would be. This is no final rendering. This is a concept rendering for us to make our grant application, which Courtney will explain.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Courtney Bitalari. For everyone that doesn't know me, I live on Fisk Street with my husband and daughter, who is 5, not yet in Carlisle school. We're still kind of doing whatever until that time happens. And I have 2 dogs. We have Zoe, who's much older, not great on a leash. So it's hard for us to, go to places like the bog and make sure she's being respectful to others. So the dog park's just appealing to me as a person. And we also got a COVID puppy. We were one of those people that adopted a rescue, and that's Jackie. So she's a little one that could really benefit from socialization as well, other than her cranky big sister. So that's enough about me. Let's talk about the big scary question of how we're going to afford this. So what we're trying to do, and we got interrupted by COVID. We had started this process prior, but then COVID happened, so it kind of got pushed. But what we're trying to do is apply for a grant from the Stanton Foundation. The Stanton Foundation was created by Frank Stanton, who was a longtime president of CBS. And part of this is just his legacy. So they don't only supply grants to dog parks, they do a lot of canine welfare in general. So things like canine unit grants, education for healthcare providers for dogs, mobile adoption vans, all kinds of grants for things like that. And dog parks just happens to be one of the items that they fund. So again, just part of his mission to encourage that canine health, and they support the development of those enclosed dog parks that you just saw on this slide before. So nothing open, free for all, the stipulation has to be enclosed, is pretty great to keep the dogs contained. So far, there's been about 38 grant recipients under this program, including the one in Billerica that's fairly new, and the one in Chelmsford that is very, very popular. This number might have gone up since. I believe Natick and Auburn, if I recall correctly, also were recipients, recent recipients too. So we've got a good healthy sample of this being a success in other neighboring towns. Next slide, please. So right now, we are in the design phase. There are essentially 2 large stages of how this works. The design grant is where we are today. That funds 100% of the cost to design a park. And then the second phase is the construction phase. So once you go through the design grant phase, you move on to the construction grant phase, which funds 90% of the costs of this project. And like I mentioned, right now, we're planning for the application for the design grant. And one of the major critical steps to obtaining a design grant is an assurance letter that you guys also received a copy of. And let's go to the next slide, please. So construction costs, these are some financial considerations. Construction costs, so until we have until we've done the design study, we don't know for sure what the costs are going to be. The Stanton Foundation has a ton of information on their website, and they give you a range from about $120,000 to $250,000 is the kind of ballpark area for a dog park cost. So if we look at that, based on what the construction grant covers, the implication to the town would be around $12,000 to $25,000 to get one built, assuming that the costs remain stable in our draft budget that you'll see in a minute. And we can also leverage the Community Preservation Act to acquire the portion that Carlisle would be responsible for. And then in terms of maintenance costs, which is another major financial consideration, it doesn't seem like there's going to be a huge maintenance cost here. There will be some, but not monumental. We have an estimation between $3,000 and $5,000 annually. And just as a benchmark, Banta Davis is about $100,000 annually to maintain. And here's the draft budget. This was supplied in partnership with Fisher Design. You can kind of see a basic line item list of what this would look like, with the total estimated being $183,000. So our estimated cost would be 10% of that ballpark. That's sort of what this could look like. Again, we don't know for sure, but this is kind of a spec based on some details that we know so far. Drew, do you want to add anything more to that? I know this slide is sort of new.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, they added the Stanton Foundation, since we got started this year, added a requirement that we supply a draft budget as part of our application. So we put this together for that purpose, but it's nothing that we are bound to once we get a design grant.
Thank you. On the next slide, kind of just goes over why we're here. So, we want to tell you about this cool thing that we want to do, but we also need some support. Not a huge level, but in order for us to submit our assurance letter, we just kind of need a vote of support from the Board of Selectmen. This is only for the letter, for the application for the design grant. It doesn't bind you to anything else. We don't think this requires a vote. It does require Tim to sign and attest to certain things that I'll go over on the next page. But whether you guys take a vote, that's up to you. And then, like I mentioned on a couple of slides before, the copy of the assurance letter was shared, but let us know if you'd like it reshared, if you want to take a peek at it. And then next.
I think we got to go over this one still.
Yeah.
What we're attesting to in the assurance letter. Do you want to carry it or?
Oh, yeah, sure. I didn't know if you were taking over. Okay. Yeah, so the assurance letter is basically from the town administrator assuring the Stanton Foundation several things. They provide a checklist of things they want you to cover in your assurance letter. Basically, the plan has been well communicated to relevant stakeholders. We'll go over what that means in a minute. The land is in fact available to us for this purpose, and that the town can meet that commitment of the $10,000 percentage at the 10% of the hard construction costs. So essentially, relevant bodies and residents and butters, we have done this work so far. So we've made presentations to the school committee. That was back in March. I think it was literally the week before the pandemic kind of hit us. We presented to FinCom, Planning Board, and now you here tonight. We've also informed committees of our plans through our liaisons to the Master Steering, CPC, Board of Health, and Open Space committees. There's been a lot of articles published in the Mosquito on several occasions. We've held, several open meetings during RECCOM where this was an agenda item. We've held discussions with the town's dog control officer, Larry Sorley, and Tim Goddard, and we've consulted with many enthusiastic dog owners and a resident professional dog walker. And the overall sentiment so far is people are pretty supportive and excited about it. I think first, we sometimes get met with the, do we really need a dog park? But when people kind of find out the process and how it could be funded, there seems to be a lot of support here. That's just some anecdotal observations from me. And then some other questions here, safety, liability. I guess, Drew, do we have a position on this? It's been a while since we last presented this deck, but I don't know.
That's fine. I don't think we think there's any safety concern, any new ones presented by anything, by a dog park relative to what Carlisle faces right now. Tim Goddard researched with our carriers whether there'd be any additional insurance liability or issues, and found none. I'll let him speak to that if he wants to elaborate further. We don't know at this point what materials we would use or what the design would look like. I mean, that would be a community process. We would want a lot of input about that.
The Stanton Foundation, the Stanton Foundation also publishes data on what dog parks do that have received this grants. They have all kinds of cool new dashboards that are actually new since we started this process that kind of show like the number of dog parks in the area that have selected the P Stone, for example. So you can kind of get a benchmark of what others are doing, which is pretty great to know.
We also don't know what restrictions and rules we might want to put in place. And, we think when we think about the design process, we think we would want a, interdisciplinary or cross committee group formed with your input and suggestion to come up with the design and all those other parameters. We wouldn't just make this a RecCom project. We would want inputs from a broader group, and we look to you for what that might look like. So hopefully we have your support. Fido wants it.
Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you. Go ahead. I'll open it up now to the other members of the select board. Any comments or questions?
I have a question. Am I?
Go ahead, Barney.
muted? Let's see. Yeah, no, I guess I'm not muted. Great. Well, I applaud you all for taking the initiative and trying to move forward with something like this. I'm a dog owner myself, so very much understand what you're describing. Yeah, so I have a couple of different questions. One is, so you mentioned, did you say that there are more than 600 dog licenses issued in town?
I think there's more, 463 was the number I think I got.
463, okay.
We actually think there are, or the town clerk at that time felt like there were hundreds of unregistered dogs.
Yeah. So how have you determined the demand for this? I know you've been to different boards, and I understand that, you had some open discussions at the RecCom, but how have you measured the demand or interest for something like this?
It's anecdotal. We don't have a quantification of that. We haven't sent a survey to all of the dog owners or anything like that. I'm not sure how we would reach them all. In the past, when RecCom has done surveys, we've gotten really poor participation rates. Mm-hmm. I don't know that a pandemic would make that better. So it's a little bit difficult to measure, Barney. But we do see that the dog parks in other towns are very popular and get a lot of fanfare and support. Mm-hmm. So I rely on that.
Yeah. And tell me a little bit more about your thinking about the maintenance, because that 3,000 to 5,000 seems kind of low. Again, I don't know what's involved in the maintenance of a dog park, but mm-hmm. I have been to different dog parks, and I have to say, if they aren't maintained properly, they are really awful.
There's definitely an attrition in usage when they're not, and there's a recommendation in the Stanton Foundation about a couple things, and we've discussed kind of partnering with DPW. Drew, I don't know if we're still thinking about that. Also, the Stanton Foundation recommends a type of trash barrel that's kind of compostable, really large, doesn't require a ton of emptying. So just kind of tips like that to keep the maintenance lower. The dog park is intended to be a year-round thing, so we do have to kind of consider what that would look like. The Stanton Foundation recommends providing the little waste bags and the receptacle for those. So that's something we do need to consider here as well. And then other maintenance things like raking the pea stone or adding more, things like that, and just general things like fences. So Drew, I don't know if we have approached DPW about it, or if we plan to, or if it would be covered under kind of the Vantage.
I didn't ask DPW when I came up with that estimate. I asked our fields contractor if they had to keep it clean and to blow it out, and generally maintain it. So the people who go and mow the fields like twice a week and also do like the fertilizer and so forth, they're there most often. And they said that they would have no problem going in and cleaning it up. And if it was a big problem, like if dog owners aren't cleaning up after themselves, then we're going to have an enforcement issue, right? We're not going to just let that be the, because if you had a contractor had to treat it, like cleaning up a sewer, obviously 3 to 5 is low.
Yeah.
So, we would need some enforcement. We have found that dog owners enforce for each other when there is a problem. So when we've had the problems over by the track at the Banta soccer field, we've been contacting a group of local dog walkers and to say, we're having a problem. Can you please, pitch in and help? I think in a dog park, it's even easier because, the materials are such that you see the waste much easier. One of the problems that happens in the fields is those dogs are running off. And if they, take a deuce behind first base, nobody notices.
Right.
Until the first baseman shows up. So, I think it's more easily maintained. It's easier for a dog owner to see what happens in a dog park, especially when everybody's together more socially. Like,
Yeah, that kind of culture definitely helps regulate the behavior there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I saw a little bit in the letter, I guess the one that Stanton wants to see about private fundraising. There was something about reporting any private fundraising. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, we thought that we would apply for the CPA funds for the 10% portion. And I think, as I recall, the Stanton Foundation just has a lot of, their concern isn't that you do that. They're not necessarily encouraging the private fundraising. They just want to be sure that if you do private fundraising, that the signatories, or that they don't want to be associated with dog parks that are sponsored by Chevron or something.
Okay.
So that was more their concern, which is why in our letter we said, if it is done with CPA funds, that we would need to put up a sign acknowledging that, because that's the statute.
Okay. And a couple more things. One, so I noticed I saw it somewhere in the presentation that the approximate size is something like 2 acres. Is that right? Or is that is that in the ballpark of what, or the dog park of what you're
I don't know how to
actually tell you.
translate feet to acres. Like the big dog park is probably like an area of 150 by 200 feet.
I have the
Well, that's less than
average
an acre.
here. I have an average from the Stanton Foundation. So it says around 34,000 average square feet. I don't know what that translates to acres, but that's the data that they've published.
Yeah.
Two acres is about 85,000 square feet.
So
And how much does Stanton recommend?
34.3 thousand.
About 1 acre.
Yeah, about an acre.
Thanks, Ellen.
And so you've already determined that there's that much space in that area that you've identified on the map. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
there was, when they surveyed that, there was room for 2 athletic fields. So, which would be twice what we need.
Yeah. And then just tell me, what kind of response have you gotten from the different committees that you have presented to?
Like I said, like Courtney said, lots of support. I will say, there is a like a sort of 10% faction of dog park. We don't need a dog park kind of, a classic sort of Carlisle. It kind of reminds me, Barney, of when we put in the paths. There was a very vocal minority about the paths, but most everybody else nodded their heads and said, we need, this is a really good idea.
Yeah.
I imagine if the dog park were not funded by the Stanton Foundation, there would be, a more vocal opposition to it. But I, the reason we went, the funny thing about how we came across the Stanton Foundation was not like we saw the Stanton Foundation and thought, hey, let's get a dog park. We were trying to figure out how we were going to get a dog park because we've had this problem and we've been trying to solve it with respect to how we're maintaining our fields and the dogs running rampant over them. Because we had tried to close the fields to the dogs. You may recall some articles about that. And in the process of researching dog parks and what it might cost and what it might take, I came across the Stanton Foundation. So,
Yeah.
Have you considered it all? I mean, we've had issues in the past with out-of-town people. Is that a concern at all?
That's something that we could seek to enforce if it was a problem. Honestly, it's probably between Billerica and Chelmsford right now, Carlilians are going and using those dog parks. I know lots of people who are doing that,
Okay.
lots of the people we've spoken to. So there's a little bit of a reciprocity that we might tolerate, I think, depending upon
Okay.
how big the usage is.
Right.
Got it. And among the, this is probably a rhetorical question, but among the committees she was attached, how did the finance committee react?
They were favorable.
Good. Oh, wow.
Only Lynn Lipinski was not in favor, but everybody else
Okay.
was quite positive about it.
Very good. Okay. That's
And-
a-
I just have a brief question for Luke, being the chair of the CPA. What do you think the chances of CPAs being in support of a grant application for the order of 18K for a dog park, Luke?
Yeah, I think we've actually discussed it in the past, and it's an allowable use, so it's not really our decision. It would go to town meeting, but
As long as it's allowable, yeah.
no, it's allowable. Yeah, a lot of other towns have actually done it. Yeah.
Okay,
No, and I mean, it's the whole thing that CPA really strives for too, is to leverage funds. So to get 90% of it paid for, I think is phenomenal.
okay,
I
But we
just
will
trying
not pay to
to,
maintain. Yeah.
Right. That's
yeah.
But yeah, it's the maintenance piece, right? And if that can be, you just, you need responsible people and be able to police each other. So.
David?
Yeah, I'll chime in, because I was actually on school committee when they presented. And school owns Banta,
Yeah,
and school committee at that time was supportive. So just so you know that, that it's not really in the school's portfolio about dog parks, but certainly the use of Banta is, and it was deemed a worthy use of Banta.
And they took
Really
a
used
vote,
area of the
actually. They took a vote, actually, just recently to formally endorse.
Good. Great.
Thank you.
And Drew, what's the timing, or Courtney, what's the timing on this? You put in the grant for the first phase, and then assuming that goes well, and then we would go for the second phase. I mean,
So, yeah,
what do you see as the,
that's a great question. There's no timeline on like response from Stanton that they have published. So I don't know how long the review process would be for the letter. But I don't know if we have like a set date in mind of when we want to physically break ground here. I think we're just kind of taking it step by step, because we still have the whole construction grant phase to get through as well. So I'm personally just trying to take the bits and pieces that I can work on. I don't know, George, I don't know, think we don't have an aggressive timeline that I know, but
Just aggressive in terms of getting it in this year, our application, because we know that they cap how many grants they accept. It seems that they've never reached their cap, but they've only been doing this for a few years, and I suspect that other towns have caught on. There are a lot of towns in Massachusetts. And I think that if we can get it in 2020, we stand a better chance, because I don't think a lot of towns will have had their act together.
yeah, and we're ready to submit the letter. And then after that, we're in their system, hopefully.
and would you anticipate that something might go before town meeting next spring, or are you thinking probably not till 2022?
I think if we, we've been having some fall special meetings on a pretty regular basis lately, right? So I can imagine that if we have one next year in 2021, that we might be ready to present then, but not, I think, by April.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we might be off cycle if we want to be aggressive, or we can be at town meeting in 2022 if we want to be on cycle. But we don't know if we submit this thing next week and they come back with a design grant and we can get a design together in February. I mean, it seems like a pretty aggressive timeline, but not infeasible.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none. Now, we don't need a formal vote on this, I take it, but would like to get a indication of support. Tim can sign the letter. So people for or against?
I, for,
Yeah, I'm comfortable with Tim signing the letter. I just do want to, remind us all that's, and I know you have said this in your presentation, but that it's not a, that the board is not voting to approve the actual dog park itself, but we are supporting the, trying to get the design
Concept.
the application.
Yeah.
Yep.
Explore it further, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Luke?
Yeah, no, I'm for it.
Okay, me too. So we'll, I
Me
would say
too.
this, to take this as a indication of select board support, and if you'll provide the letter to Tim, we will ask him to sign it.
Great.
Terrific. Thank you all so
And
much.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
One quick thing about the letter, just because we just passed this, and it's a good reminder of that we're now known as the select board rather than the Board of Selectmen.
I did not know that, Barney.
Yes, town meeting just made the change.
Right,
We're
great.
pretty good about not forgetting that.
Now, I was thinking, so we're no longer the BOS, I guess, right?
We are
What
not.
We're the SB.
The,
Yeah,
Luckily, it's not SOB.
better be in the better than be in the BS.
Yeah, or SOB, right? Okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your presentation, and good luck.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you very much.
Thanks all.
Yeah.
Take
Yeah.
care, everyone. Have a good
Thank
night.
Alrighty.
thank you.
The next item on the agenda is municipal aggregation, and I will ask unmute for Bob Zog.
Muted?
Yeah, so I think we also have Mark Campadona and Denise Allard on as well from Colonial Power. And I think, Tim, the main thing we wanted to do tonight was update you on where we are with the two pieces of outreach information around our community choice aggregation, one being the letter of notification that will go out, I think, at the end of November to alert customers who are currently involved in the CCA of the change to the new contract. So they're aware of the new options and the new pricing. And the Energy Task Force has gone back and forth with Colonial Power on the wording. And with this particular notification, the wording is, as Colonial Powers explained to us several times, the wording is very, very prescribed by the DPU. And so there's really very little leeway. In my view, I think the most important decision on this notification letter for the select board is to decide whether Carlisle wants to send this out ourselves or whether we want Colonial Power to do it. I know when we last discussed CCA, before we had the contract signed, I thought I heard a fair bit of interest in having this go out on Carlisle letterhead by Carlisle and a Carlisle envelope, just to help avoid the confusion. And Colonial Power is very open to that, but I think there are some requirements, unfortunately, that we still need to meet. And I don't know whether our letterhead and our envelopes would meet the requirements or could be made to meet the requirements. So first thing we should probably do is confirm whether if the select board does in fact want this to go out on our letterhead and our envelopes, and then second, check with Colonial Power and see whether we can meet the requirements with our stationery.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bob, my own feeling is, if at all possible, I would like to have it go out on Carlisle letterhead in our envelope, if only to differentiate it from the kind of commercial solicitations we get every now and then from other companies trying to sell us things. And it would give it a legitimacy that otherwise might not be apparent to all the people receiving the letter, even though Colonial certainly has full confidence of everybody here. But I think to the people who may be wary of it or who might just throw it in the trash, on a town letterhead would reduce the probability of that happening.
Yeah, I'd agree.
one of the implications that Colonial Power has pointed out that any addresses that kick out, if it has our return address, obviously those letters will come back to us. I don't really know why the addresses would be bad, because I think they're coming from Eversource, and I think they'd have to be, they're sending, these are the billing addresses they're using. I
Right.
think they're good. But that is, one minor factor as well. Denise or Mark, do you want to add anything or correct anything I just said about the envelope and the letterhead?
No, so I think, this is Denise, hi. So I think in terms of the addresses, let's start there, right? So it's utility grade data. So if folks are getting electronic bills and they don't keep their mailing addresses current, you do run the risk of mailing addresses being outdated because folks are just going online to get their bills. So that is one of the concerns with the utility grade data in terms of the addresses. In terms of the town letterhead for the envelope and the letter, we have done that with other communities. We've not had the communities do the mailing themselves. Typically what happens, the city of Pittsfield, city of Lowell, they send over electronic letterhead. I don't know if you have electronic letterhead. So like for Lowell, for instance, we have a city seal that bleeds off the top left corner of the letter, and then there's the logo at the very bottom of the second page. So it can be placed on the digital copy, with our print vendor. So we can certainly get it in there. That's an alternative to the town rather, sorry, doing the mailing themselves and us sending everything over to the town and the town having to absorb the responsibility of doing the mailing and still using town letterhead and envelope. I don't know if that's an option.
Do you happen to remember, didn't we do it on town letterhead last time we did this we did it on the other?
No, it was Public Power that was the winning vendor, and they have a little more salesy than we would have otherwise liked. So I believe it had a window and a perforated.
Actually, 3 windows.
3 windows on the envelope, so it really looked more salesy than it should have. We're not very fond of that. We're happy to use, if there is an option to use the town letterhead through electronic, we'll take care of it for you, and we'll send the town a copy so that you can see actually what went out.
Yeah. And we have that, don't we, Tim?
We do. We have that electronically. And if it's a standard business envelope, we could use the town's own envelopes. People are used to getting those envelopes with the green lettering from us. They'd know it was coming from the town we could use those envelopes.
Yeah.
I believe we could. We'll probably just want to reimburse you for it, so we're not using your stock. But other than that, we'll probably just physically need to stop over, Tim. We're not far away. I'll just have to, maybe you leave it outside or whatever it might be, and I'll pick them up and leave you the check, and I'll bring them to the vendor. We'll get them printed that way. If that's what the town wants to do, Denise, I don't think Gary would have a problem with that. Do you?
No, I don't think so. I think we just need to, it should be fine. We just need to get that do not discard message on there, but we should be able to print right on what they have.
Just so you know, going back, the Department of Public Utilities has requested, I used the wrong term, required us to, it was, I just want to make sure that I don't
That's even the nice.
Do not discard important notice regarding electricity rates on the bottom of your letter. We can certainly ask them to match font and color to the best of their ability, but they, 1 second, Denise, is that required in black, or it wouldn't make a difference?
I don't think it makes a difference as long as we get the text on there.
Okay, great. So we would take your direction on that. And it is on, I don't know if Bob has that so you could see down the bottom the kind of the mock-up of the letter.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just don't know if everyone is seeing that or not.
What was sent out in the packet?
Yeah, I didn't know.
No, I
didn't get it.
There's 2 letters. It's confusing. What's the difference between
The one in the packet was a few revisions ago. There was some back and forth between Bob, the Energy Task Force, and Colonial. So today I sent to you the most recent draft version of both notices. Yeah.
And
Okay.
is that one the one that's dated December 1st, Tim?
I don't have it in front of me, but
Oh, okay.
The one I have is dated November 30th.
I've got it in front of me with what he sent today, so hang on. The letter, Town of Carlisle's Community Choice Power Supply, November 30th.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Yeah, the other documents, the press release.
And the other documents, a press release, and then there's the envelope, the customer notification letter envelope is on there.
Right. Yeah, there were 3 documents. Yeah,
Yeah.
3 separate.
So that customer notification envelope, that's the one on the outside that, all of these other pieces of information will be put in. Well, the press release goes on its own, the letter goes inside this envelope.
Actually, this does have the Town of Carlisle, the envelopes, if there were a matter of being the wrong address, it says Town of Carlisle, care of the competitive supplier, One Supplier Street, Supplier, Massachusetts. So that would solve that problem of it, not, any letters that are misaddressed would not necessarily bounce back to the town hall. They'd go back to the supplier at least.
Yeah, and would come to, Katie, it would come back to Colonial. Matter of fact, doing this, we preferred it so that we know who we didn't get in touch with and who we did, so forth and so on.
Right, so that's if we use the letter that I sent over as the mock-up. If we use the town envelope, right, it's going to go back to the town because that's going to be the return address on there.
Point. If we use your envelopes, it would end up back at Town Hall because that's going to be the return address on your pre-printed envelopes. If we did something like this, we could do, and I don't know if everyone's looking at it, we could have it come back to us like we normally would do. But, maybe we could pop up once a week or whatever it was to pick up that if required.
Okay.
So are we interested in looking specifically at the content of the letter?
Well, I read it.
I was just going to pull it up because I was looking at the 2 that were in the packet and
Well,
not the one that we just got. So
Do you want me to pull it up on the screen?
yeah, if you could, that'd be great, Bob. Just because I had a couple of questions about the versions I saw, but they might have been addressed.
Well, we don't know, first of all, whether it's higher or lower. We still have a couple of things.
Yeah.
And there's
All
still-
right, so this is the version. All right.
Large enough?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Um,
So on the Eversource price, their per kilowatt hour, I thought I saw something further below that says you have to, are we actually going to show the price or did I see something further?
Yeah, so
below that
Eversource
said-
go to RFP on November 17th. We don't know what that rate is going to be January 1 yet. They go out on November 17th, and they should file that price with the DPU shortly thereafter. We probably won't know it until November 24th. So we'll populate it
Your plan
once.
is to put the actual price in. once you-
Correct.
Yeah, great.
And we're presuming, by the way, it's going to be higher than what we're,
Right.
except for the optional green 100.
What's the thing that,
We don't, the projections, and I think we talked about this when the contract, I think Mark, projections are coming in at, 11.3, so it might be right there.
You might be right at it. 11.3, 11.4 just depends.
So
A little bit of good.
Yeah.
Boston did sign a contract. It might create a little bit of migration risk for all of basic service, so maybe it comes in 11.5 or 11.6.
Okay, but we chose the 11.4 because that's what we thought the Eversource number was going to be.
That was about the average over the last 30
Right.
months.
Right.
But-
11.6, I think.
I don't understand, because Alan went to this meeting, right? And there was a bidding, it was a 20-minute window or something, and
Yeah, that's where we,
locked in that price at that time.
Right.
Yes.
But this is not, these basic service prices are comparing to your alternative of getting your service through Eversource.
Right. That's if you opt out.
Oh, you're just saying, okay, so
This is
what
for
we have,
information.
what's
This is
not
the
in yellow
alternative.
is what we already bid, is what we locked in.
that's correct.
Ah, okay, thank you.
And
Sorry.
the default is the standard
Standard product.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah,
New terminology. DPU is standard and optional.
uh-huh. It's just, I think for I don't know if there's a way to, I know you say it later on about the default, but I was just thinking if there was a way to identify it on that chart. I mean, when I looked at this letter, the main thing that was very easy for me to understand was the per kilowatt hour differences. But understanding which one is the one I'm automatically signed up for unless I requested something else wasn't immediately clear, even though,
So we're mailing to folks that are already participating, so no one's going to get moved. I mean, everyone's just going to stay in the product they're in. So folks right now are either in the standard or the optional with the current contract. So folks will get moved over in line with the product they're in now, and then they could certainly choose to opt up to the Green 100, which is the 100% Mass Class 1 option. They'd have to actively go online or make a phone call to opt into that, seeing it's a new option.
right. And if somebody was in the optional basic but wanted to go to standard, I mean, anybody that's in it can request via the vehicle that's described to be moved to a different choice.
Right. The program's already active. They're already in a product of their choosing. Otherwise, they would have moved around. So it's not really a matter of people
I
being.
I think as we talked about at the last board meeting, I think a lot of people in town probably have no idea what they're signed up for, and so understanding that, will it designate when you get your letter? Does it indicate which one you're in?
So the letter isn't addressed to everyone's going to get this same letter. So there's no
Okay, so
match between the envelope and the letter, right? It's going out to all participating.
Okay, it's
consumers.
a generic what do they call that? Resident letter.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And Barney, the
Right,
bad
it's
news,
not going to be yeah.
there's nothing on your current bill that will tell you what, so I'm just going to just say if someone was in the standard product, it's 10981 right now.
Yeah.
There's nothing there on your bill that would say to you, oh, I'm going to be switched to the 11450. You would just have to know what you were in now to where you were going to go. You don't have to do anything. It's going to happen automatically.
Yeah.
But there's not something that states to you, unless you know that you're in the standard product now, that's RPS plus 100% national wind at 10981. There's no way of determining that.
Okay. Huh.
I just wanted you to be aware. It's not intuitive it's not you. It's not intuitive the way the department has this set up.
Yeah.
Right.
There's, again, a couple blanks to fill in once we know Eversource rates and whether they're higher or lower than ours. May change the wording. Yeah, and again, the Energy Task Force has been back and forth. We a little bit on the wording here, and I think within the guidelines, we've got it as good as we can get it, I think, from the perspective of the Energy Task Force. And we've also added, by the way, that people can contact the Energy Task Force if they prefer for any reason.
Yeah.
Talk
That's
to
good.
us. We added that in.
Yeah.
Yeah, the select board should understand that the DPU very heavily regulates this particular communication, so there's not a lot of flexibility in what you can say.
Yeah.
We already tried. We
It's super unfortunate, and we
feel sorry.
agree.
For
it's a little overstepping. It's a town program, and the town should really be able to speak to residents as it wants. But with all the third-party suppliers out there, the DPU is very sensitive about if you say this, then that triggers you need to say this, and you always need to provide the comparative rates, and you always need to say savings cannot be exceeded, and you can't use subjective terminology when describing products. So it's really prescriptive. It's unfortunate. I completely understand, but it's just
Denise,
they want to make sure accurate black and white information gets out there. So
Denise, do we as a town have the same restrictions? In other words, could we put a cover letter from the select board that says, kind of more in plain English, we we looked at this thing, we think it's a good thing. You may not know what service you have, but it's likely you have this 100% wind, blah, blah, blah. By aggregating, we, get some purchasing power. I mean, can we make those statements as a town and not be under the same restriction that you are as an aggregator?
So, and Mark, jump in if you disagree with what I'm saying. My recommendation would be to do that separate from the letter when it goes out in a separate communication, whether it be a newsletter or a website posting or something that gets pushed out via other mechanism. I don't know if Mark, do you agree with that?
The only thing, so when we sent this in, and David, I actually like the way you're thinking here. The problem is they're so prescriptive. Now if we're a third-party supply, we can basically lie, cheat, and steal. But because we're a municipal aggregation, we're not allowed to.
Well, we don't want you to lie, cheat, and steal. We just want to make it in plain English.
Right, exactly. I get it. The only reason I'm saying is when it was signed off on, I guess we could ask. We have some time. We could ask the department if so it's going to Cascade. We could ask if they would mind if this letter could accompany the notification. What I'm wondering is what you were going to say in that letter, so we don't have they go, okay, let us see the letter, and then we got that.
Yeah.
Well, we have time to draft, as you say, but let me give you what I'm hearing. One is, there's no way, I agree with Marnie. The average resident opens up, me too. I have no idea what I signed for. I get this letter, which does explain my options, but it kind of says, you don't have to do anything if you're happy with what you have, right? So we don't have, the people are going to say, well, gee, it's coming from the town, but it doesn't really tell me what I have or what I'm going to be paying because I don't know which option I signed for. So it would be, it would be better than that. That's point one. Point two is, it's not super clear that it has the stamp of legitimacy of the select board or the town, even though it has an emblem, which is buttressed by the sample envelope you sent, competitive supplier, one supplier street. I guess my knee-jerk reaction is, let us mail the letters and let us put the town of Carlisle Town Hall, because the amount of people who won't actually be living at where their utility says they are is like 0.01%. There'll be like 10 letters that maybe we have to research. So I think, the town can ably handle sending out 1,300 letters or whatever. And it would come back to the town and we could put an insert in that we want if we're allowed to. And we could think about how we want to say that in a way that people will understand what they read, and as opposed to either A, to Alan's point, throwing it away, or B, saying, I don't know what this is, and, asking like, where do I call, and all this kind of stuff. So I think I agree, we don't want to lie, cheat, and steal. And I take your point that some other, companies are doing it in a more kind of snazzy marketing way. We don't need to do that. We just have to explain it. So I'd like to see a better outcome on it.
David, I think we'd be better off doing all that explaining before this letter goes out. This letter has got a lot of pages and a lot of words. If you just add another page and a lot more words, I don't know which one they're going to read. So I think we're much better off educating the public through the mosquito, through website, through whatever, City in the Woods, however you think.
Right. I'm not sure I agree, but I'll say, okay, so now let's, go to that level. How do we address Barney's point? So I see the mosquito, it says, this is great. The select board did all these great things. We're going to save money, blah, blah, blah. We're going to be green. So I'm happy. Now I get the letter and I'm like, I don't know what I have. How do you address the point that they don't know what they have?
Well, in part, most of them have the standard, because there were only two choices before. You could have the standard or you could opt into the lower cost one. So you tell them, you probably, unless you had already contracted with some other green or third party thing, and you were still on Eversource, you were put in the standard column.
Right,
and
fair enough.
Up into the cheaper one. So that's where everybody is, and they know,
Okay, no, okay. And if I did sign with some third party, do I stay with that third party, or is this moving me
Well,
over?
before they had to, because they probably had a, let's say a 1 or 2 year contract, and then this came in and they couldn't get out of their other contract. Now they can, now if they're just back on Eversource, they're going to go into our standard.
But they have to do something to do that.
No, they
So
don't.
this is Denise. I just want to be clear. The only folks that are going to get this are folks that are currently participating in the program. So we're not allowed to mail to anyone who's on third-party supply. We don't have that information. We can't get that from
How
the
do we-
utility.
That brings up another set of issues. How do we
Yeah.
induce those people to switch over?
Yeah.
Or can we even?
Well, they did it for whatever reasons, they went over to those other third-party things because either those third-party suppliers were offering greener energy than we were offering, or they
Yeah.
were offering way less expensive energy.
Yeah.
And
So,
Okay, let's.
Oh, and we can do it in a mosquito article.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think we should do that probably before this hits people's
Yeah.
mailboxes,
Yeah.
saying that you're going to be getting this. Here's what it means. Here's what standard is. Here's what, I mean, before, actually, you had three options before. You had the standard option, which was the National Wind. You could stay with Eversource,
Yeah,
or you could go to the low cost.
okay, no, I agree. So what's our timetable? When do we have to get that out to the mosquito? Is this going out at the end of November?
Well, this all takes place the first of the year.
Okay, so
So-
the letter, even though.
Got to
it's-
be done prior to that.
So we
Letter
need
was
to-
planning to go out November 30th. Usually you send it out a month before a rate change, just so folks have the ability to switch, on their meter read if they so choose.
So we need, I think, Alan, we
we
need
did,
to,
yeah.
offline, we need to draft a
Yes.
piece here. So
Yep.
let's.
The
Yeah.
Energy
Yeah,
Task
we could-
Force would be happy to
Yeah.
help with that. So if you want to appoint a point person to work with me, I'd be happy to coordinate with the select board and help with that.
I'd be happy to be the select board coordinator since I was involved with the first time around. I know a little more about the history of it.
Okay. So my last comment, then I'll shut up, is the back to the envelope. I still think, like, if there are the rare return addressee unknown or whatever, that the town hall is better equipped to reroute that than somebody else.
and I also think having our return address
Yeah.
is just going to make people more likely to open it.
So
You know,
that's my, I
You may
agree.
see the town seal on the corner, but if then you look at the return address as some, this other
Right.
company
It
name, you
looks
don't
like it's
recognize.
scam. I agree. So that's, I agree with Barney. That's my input on that.
And
So I'd just like to add, Mark Capadona, just asking, normally this is something that we would pay for. Does a company do this, or is it employees at town hall that would be sending out the 1,600 pieces of mail, or who actually handles this so that, I don't know how you guys do your mailings. I don't know.
that would be
Exist-
Tim.
There's a mailing service.
Yeah, I think what Tim's idea was he was going to give you envelopes that already have the seal and the return address printed on it, and then however they normally did it, you normally do it, you would just use those envelopes. When I had understood with your previous conversation that was doable.
That is very simple for us. So that's easy. I thought you wanted to handle it. Just the envelopes, and it goes back to you.
Yep.
No, if it's Mark, if it's misaddressed,
Yes.
if you send them out and I'm telling you, it'll be fewer than 10 returns.
Yeah, but the problem is, David, that we don't have the list of the people because
Right.
not everybody in town gets this energy. And so
Right.
we cannot send this to everybody in town.
No, but you're overcomplicating it. Let Mark and his guys send it. I'm just saying the return address is Westford Street.
Fine, that's fine. Then,
And the
I agree
handful
with
that
you.
come back, we'll deal with. We'll deal
Yeah.
with the hand.
yes,
Right.
I thought you were saying that you thought the
No,
town.
no, no, just the back end.
Okay, that's fine. I agree with you.
So let's try to zero in on the timing on this then, because what I'm hearing is that we should draft something to go in the mosquito that we would like to have there. I mean, I would recommend it's maybe a week before people might get this letter in the mail. right? So if you're planning to try to have the letter mailed, actually, get done by your company and people receive it early December, then that means we're looking at the end of November mosquito issue. And hopefully it's maybe not right before Thanksgiving, right? Maybe it can be the one of the following Thanksgiving. Because I wonder if it'll get
I think
off.
prior to Barney.
You think prior to Thanksgiving?
I think so.
Thanksgiving is the 26th, 20,
Yeah.
the 19th would be prior. And
Yeah.
that is 1, 2, 3 weeks from now.
Yeah.
I think that's doable.
Is that doable?
Sure.
Yeah.
And
And I know
then,
Betsy Fell really is interested in getting communications out on this, so I think
Yep.
she'll definitely.
okay, great.
with
And
us.
then Denise and Mark, you would, ideally, when do you think you would want this to go out, and when would people in Carlisle be receiving the formal announcement?
So we're looking to mail on November 30th, right? We need the Eversource rates before we can mail. So it's going
Yeah.
to be dependent on when we get those rates. So if we get those, I'm assuming around the 24th, once we populate them, we can send them over to our print vendor and he can start working on. So I'm hoping by the 30th we can get it out.
Okay. So what we might want to do if it's at all delayed, or even if it isn't, but have the mosquito run a small little, in the issue that will come out right after the people get the letter, say, hey, reminder, you're getting this letter about XYZ, right? And then it sounds like we also need an additional method for inviting people that were not participating last time to participate this time.
So
And how does
this
that
is
get
Denise.
done?
I don't want to complicate matters. I'm sorry to throw this at you. I just want to make sure we're comprehensive here so I don't leave anything out. And Bob and I had kind of talked about this. So there are kind of three categories of people. People are participating in the program, folks who are on third-party supply contracts who we can't mail to, and then there's folks that are on basic service, right, new in town, or they rolled off third-party contracts since the last mailing that was done. We had planned, and you can direct us if you still want us to do this or not, we were going to send a basic service mailing to folks on basic service who had previously not opted out, and that involves kind of the initial launch information. It's a similar letter to this, but it has an opt-out card, right, because those folks have to have 30 days to be able to opt out if they so choose. They're not already participating. We were going to kind of send that shortly just to the basic service folks after this mailing went out. Is that too confusing with two mailings floating around at the same time? Do you want us to hold off on doing this basic service mailing for a month after this letter goes out? At least it'll target those. Go ahead.
But it sounds like it's going to a different list.
Correct. So there are a bunch of folks who are on basic service right now.
Right.
Those are folks that either opted out of the program in the past 30 months and wanted to just be on Eversource, or folks that have rolled off third-party contracts. Right. So that's a different list. It's a eerily similar letter, obviously by the DPU, comes with an opt-out card that folks would have to return if they don't want to be enrolled. I know, super confusing, unfortunately.
So this second mailing you're talking about is, okay, they're automatically enrolled in it if they don't send back the opt-out card.
Right, that's similar to the initial mailing that went out, and we've been doing those periodically, quarterly or whatever, since program launched. It's how you sweep in folks from basic service to keep enrollment numbers up.
Yeah.
So they don't have to actively,
So they actually have to opt out again.
Well, if you've already opted out once, you won't be remailed to. You've already made a choice. We wouldn't remail to those folks, but it would be anyone new that never received the mailing in the past.
Okay.
Got it. And so the people that are currently enrolled that are getting the first letter with these now 4 choices that we're offering, they will not get an opt-out card. They'll just have to read that if they don't want to participate again, they have to read the information and contact the appropriate person.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Or if they want to change from their current service, their current
From the standard.
type of program from the standard, yeah, then they contact somebody and make the change. All right, I got
Correct. Perfect.
it. Okay.
With
You want a
the,
job?
And then
Wanted
people
to-
have a certain amount of time, they have a certain amount of time to respond. And what's that deadline?
Are you talking about the basic
after.
service mailing, the second mailing? Is that what you're, or the,
Well,
are we still on the?
If there's a different timing for both of them, yeah, what is it for each one?
So for the participating consumers, they can, whenever it's convenient for them, they're just going to be moved over to what they're in now. If they want to switch, they can do that whenever they want, immediately
Okay.
after December 7th or 2 months down the road, whenever. No timing really there.
Okay,
The service mailing, say you mail in December. They have 30 days to opt out. If they don't opt out in those 30 days and there's a date on the letter, respond by, then they would
Yeah.
get automatic enrolled. Anytime after that, though, they may opt out at no fee or penalty, but initially they would be enrolled with that little batch for,
Yeah.
the smaller list.
yeah, okay. Yeah,
And I did want to mention, Doctor, I just, to your question, you could mail, we have the list of opt-outs. We have seen it be a bad practice, so we're very cognizant of that. People get upset, we already opted out of this. It's a town program. We just want you to understand, we have the list of people that have opted out in the past. We could show that to you and you could mail to them. The problem is if they didn't catch it and they would be enrolled, and that we have found it's been more of a hot button item than something that's advantageous. But I'm just telling you, you have access to the opt-outs if you wanted to do that.
That could be handled differently then. That could be
Yep.
handled by
yeah.
a phone call or a postcard or whatever.
Any other questions?
well,
Okay.
Alan, do you want to take time to look at the press release quickly, or again, the Energy Task Force is working
Yep.
with Colonial Power on that. It's your call if you want to look at it quickly.
I've seen it, so I would just ask any of the other board members if you've gone over
Might have
and
a
looked at
couple.
that. That was one of the 3 pieces that was sent.
Right,
Energy Task Force might have a couple minor edits here, just moving
Yeah.
things around a little bit, but nothing. I think the main thing is we need to get a blurb about Carlisle and some sort of a logo to put at the end. And I don't know if we have something standard we can use there for press releases.
and another, just a minor, well, it's not that minor because it's in the heading, but electricity is misspelled.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, geez.
It is.
That's
Wow.
terrible.
I looked at this 5 times and didn't see that.
That's what you
I'm
get
with
when you
you.
get a teacher on the school board, on the select board.
Very much. Wow.
Well, that would have been embarrassing. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I gather from the silence, we're going to leave that up to the Energy Task Force to,
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that somewhat what we were talking about as the letter that was going to go to the,
Yes.
wanted to have?
well, there'll be that letter, plus there'll be a mosquito article.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so that letter could maybe be a real pared down version of this even.
Right.
Yeah, and the mosquito article the last time, so the nice thing about being remote is you can actually look this stuff up. So yeah, I just went on and it was actually, it's from June 6th of 2018. And it's actually really well done. It's got, what is aggregation? Boom, boom, boom. Opt out anytime without penalty. Boom, boom. So it's very, just question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. And I don't remember, when did we sign the last one? So,
Well, and
30 months ago. Yeah.
yeah, so what would that have put us in? June, July? Right? So it says
June
last week, eligible
2018.
homeowners received instructions, right? So this came after people had gotten the mailing, but it looks like there were a couple before. So, we should actually almost think about that, right? Try and get one in before and then one after, right? So then
Yeah,
you give them a heads up, this is coming, and then they get it. And they can say, oh, this is, okay, this
Yep.
is exactly what I'm
Yep.
looking at. Because, I mean, come to think, we had these same discussions.
We did, exactly, the
Right,
same
yeah,
discussions,
yeah. Right,
That's
just with
why.
3 different people, yeah. Yeah. So,
David, you're muted, so,
what's up?
well, David was trying to butt in and
Oh.
he was muted. I could, either that or he's talking to his son, I don't know. No, he's still muted.
Muted.
Maybe Tim could unmute him.
Yeah, trying to.
There we go.
Oh,
No,
there he is.
Nope,
Hi.
you're still muted.
There we
Yeah,
go.
okay,
too
sorry.
anxious on that button.
The question is, does this PR piece come as a separate mail? How is this sent around and when? Not what we would do, but what this PR from Colonial.
So we would release it to local papers, David.
Okay, so it
So-
wouldn't be mailed directly to individuals. It would just be,
It would not. It's a press release.
okay, fair enough. So I think it's not really going to get much play, right? So I think it sounds to me, Luke, like the FAQs would be more useful in our, whatever we put out, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, any other? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Luke,
And
I just want to ask Luke, what was the date of the mosquito article that you had up?
That was the 6th of June, 2018. It's
June
called,
6th.
yeah, the title is What's the Buzz
Okay,
About Carlisle's New Electricity Program.
okay, so we all could look that up in their archives and read that and see what we will be aiming for. Thank you very much.
And I just want to thank Bob and the Energy Task Force and whoever else has been involved in this, and Denise and Mark, but because I know there's a lot of information here and a lot to sort through, and I really appreciate the Energy Task Force's work on this.
yeah, and I also, most don't know this, but Denise and Mark were working, I mean, they worked over the weekend on this stuff. They're putting in their time and a half, and we appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Let us move on. Cable license renewal process. I know, Jenny's on. Good evening.
I'm here.
Do you want to walk us through this?
Sure. So you guys are in the process of renewing your cable licensing, and we received a letter from the state reminding us that we need to continue with this process. And really, the next step you guys need to do is undertake what's known as an ascertainment process, where you try to figure out how the cable provider has been doing. Now, I guess really what's up for you to do today is decide how you would like to do that. Towns either appoint a committee to try and figure this out or do this with staff, or often hire a consultant to basically go out and survey people in town to find out what their cable needs are, and if they've been met, survey the town, find out if there's anything that they want the cable provider to do, like provide particular PEG channels or, other types of community services, and then give you a report. And we need this report by April, which sounds like it's a long ways away, but it's really not.
Really not, no.
Yeah.
Well, I see under your immediate next steps, the Board of Selectmen should immediately determine whether the board should establish a cable advisory committee, and I suspect that's probably what we ought to do. And that they can then go through that process of trying to find out what the town feels they might like, or the complaints they have about the current cable system. So if the board would agree to that, we can appoint a committee and get started in that process.
Are we sure we want to do a committee and not just get a consultant?
Yeah, who was around for the last time? It sounds like we had difficulty getting anybody to want to volunteer
It
for
was-
this.
Yeah,
Tim, do you know what happened last
well,
time?
The Cable Advisory Committee was active then, 10 years ago when the license was last renewed. But following that, they were kind of, less and less active, and they haven't been a committee, for a number of years. When we put this out a year or so ago, we didn't get any takers on the committee. So maybe to Kate's point, I'm wondering if retaining a consultant and having, the board act as the committee might be the quicker way to do this. I mean, if we can't get a committee together for a month or two, where we've wasted a couple
Yep.
of months. And,
But what, I guess, I always ask the same question, what problem are we trying to solve?
Well,
Well, in- in-
it's not a problem, it's a requirement that we're
Yeah,
trying.
so what is
So-
it?
Yeah.
If we,
What-
but, all right, but let's go forward. If we determine whether it's task force, consultant, Ouija board, whatever it is, if we conclude that people don't like their cable provider, which basically nobody likes their cable provider, what do we do next?
So usually, I mean, you end up with this report that basically, it's like a report card for them. And you use it in your negotiations with them, if you decide you want to negotiate. Which, towns usually do.
Well, let me ask a broader question then, Jenny. If forget whatever exists, can we have an open bid? I mean, how many actual providers, forget the evaluation, if we just said, we're opening it up, we don't, anybody can bid, how many companies would bid? Does it usually just?
We don't have anybody else to bid.
One.
Yeah, that's our big problem. And I think the last time when they set the rates, it's like, this is what Concord's rate is. This is what you're getting,
Right, so why are we wasting our time? If that's the case, then why waste our time?
Yeah, why waste our money on a
I mean,
consultant?
that's why I asked the question, like, we shouldn't do it just to do it. Like, is there a there, or if they're the only game in town, then okay, they're the only game in town.
Right, yeah, because we can't use this to leverage them to do things, right? I mean, because like there are certain pockets in town where they don't have cable, right? So
that's the chief complaint to those areas that are hard to serve.
right, yeah, and I mean, especially it must have been a nightmare for people that had kids that were remote. But there's no way to leverage this. Is there? And get them to extend cable to these areas, or is there any benefit to pushing back on them, Jenny? Or
I mean, I think that's what you would use it for, is to leverage it to try and get more, more services that you want out of them. You tell them, they're falling down here and there, and if we're not, we won't renew.
we won't renew, but we have to.
That's right.
Now, the difference between a threat and a promise, right?
Yeah.
And
And you can also,
desperate appeal.
one benefit of having a consultant is a lot of these consultants, I think, work in other towns, and they can tell you what other towns have received. So, you can say, well, you did this for this town, do it for us. And they're more likely to give on those.
Yeah.
Yeah, and frankly, even if we had a cable committee, you have to have a lot of knowledge, and I don't think we have that kind of resource in this town necessarily. The big guy that we had, Claude is in Maine or Vermont somewhere. I think Carrie was interested at one point, but he doesn't know anything about it really. Anyway.
Yeah, well, maybe we see how much a consultant costs.
Yeah,
I think it would be certainly behoove us to find out how much a consultant, and I think it would be a very limited ask to this consultant.
Yeah.
Because really, we don't expect.
So Jenny, do you know of consultants that we can go find?
We've found a couple. There's a couple. I know one that another one of our towns used. Tim found one in where were they out of, Tim?
I think we're out of Boston, Epstein in August, I think.
There was
Yeah.
someone else you found too.
Oh, there was one in Amherst.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. That's
Well, a
great.
question for Jenny, though. I mean, is the ascertainment process, is that a statutory part of the licensing? Okay.
Yes,
So the town can't say, we're just not doing that piece of it. We're gonna go straight to negotiations. We have to do that first.
We have
Yeah.
to do that first.
Okay.
Yeah, all right, well, you know, if we can get a consultant at a reasonable price, that seems to be the way to go, because clearly we've got an awful lot of stuff on the table for the volunteers to do. And that seems to be one more job for which nobody is qualified, and
Plus, it's pretty thankless, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thankless. They'd probably want a consultant to help them. So,
Right.
You always want a consultant when it's.
All right, well, we'll ask, we'll see what we can do about finding a consultant and see what the price would be and go from there.
Okay.
Good.
All
Everybody
right.
agree?
Yep.
Good.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Jenny.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Jenny,
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
Jenny.
for giving us the nudge. So Tim, you gotta be the one that follows up here to make sure we don't end up twiddling our thumbs until suddenly we're a month away from the deadline.
I still have my
We've-
2 satellite dishes on the roof.
Here we go. 1 year to go.
Yeah,
So we've been
All right.
forewarned. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
thank you, Jenny.
Bye all.
Thanks, Jenny.
When I moved here, we didn't have any cable.
No,
when I moved and did some, hardscape, I laid conduit so that when fiber optic would come to town, I would have a way to get it to my house. 20 years later, I'm still waiting for the fiber optic.
Yep.
you dreamer.
It'll
Dream
be there for
on,
the next homeowner.
Yeah.
dream on.
And when this 10-year agreement expires, then you can do that one.
Yeah, jeez.
All right,
I was being so smart. Okay.
let's go to the town administrator's report.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, a couple of items. I think that Chief Fisher handled quite nicely in his earlier report. But I guess the main thing I wanted to let the board know is that I've been working with Mark Way, and we've scheduled a series of training sessions for department heads during the month of November, specific to the goal setting process. As we know, the practice of performance evaluations has fallen off significantly, and part and parcel of that is really having achievable, measurable goals established by the department heads for their employees, and actually for board chairs, establishing goals for department heads. So the training will be open to board chairs as well. And we've planned for 3 smaller groups so that we can do the training in a socially distanced way in the Clark room. The land use boards, the public safety boards, and the town hall group, for lack of a better name. This is something that we had discussed at a small group meeting a few weeks ago, and I've been working with Mark on developing the program since then. But I had a chance to preview this with the department heads, and I wouldn't say there was enthusiasm. There wasn't much pushback either. So, I told them that it wasn't mandatory that they take the training, but the mandatory piece is that they're going to have to develop goals for their employees and do performance evaluations this year. So you might as well take advantage of the training that's being offered in that regard. So I think I might have attached to my report a list of the 3 groups that we've come up with, and there might be some.
Included us, let me see.
On public safety.
Under public safety, okay. And that would be Monday, November 16th from 1 to 3.
Yeah, we can talk about that, I guess, on Friday as to who, from the board might want to be part of that, or certainly going forward. But, I think when Mark did training, with this board, I think it was pretty well received, and, we're fortunate to have him in the community. So, and in the Clark room, I think will be a good setting. And I think the groups are small enough where there's not huge concern about overcrowding or, not being prudent in how we do it. So that'll be coming up after the election. Promised the town clerk we wouldn't do anything until after the election ends next week. And early voting continues. And for election day, we're encouraging as many employees as possible to work remotely to free up parking. As you know, it's always a nightmare parking on election day. Although the town clerk, interestingly, the early voting and mail-in voting, drop-off voting has been so heavy that she's actually not anticipating the usual rush on election day itself. So it'll be interesting to see how it does turn out that way. It's been such, huge turnout really nationwide with the early voting that it's a different kind of election year. And then just Chief alluded to the Halloween event, and we got the website there for the Halloween event. I got a list of the board's upcoming meetings. November 10th, well, we're scheduling the tax classification hearing. We may have to postpone that, but we're advertising the hearing for the 10th in case we're ready to go with the setting of the tax rate. Also, on the 10th, COA Director Joan Ingersoll will be coming in to discuss a reorganization plan with the board in the wake of Angela Smith retiring. She's been doing some planning with her board, and they've got some pretty interesting ideas on what things may look like going forward. So that'll be an interesting meeting, and then the meetings through the rest of the year. Not a lot this week in my report, I guess. But I did want to let you know about that training going forward, and I didn't know who might want to be part of that. I know, Kate and David are part of the small group that's been meeting on this, but if you have an interest, you can just shoot me an email and we'll see what we can do as far as that goes.
Jim, I had some interest in sort of hearing a little bit more about how you're setting up these sessions. I think that it's a great idea. I applaud you for moving ahead with this. Have you and Mark sort of thought about how you're going to structure this? Like what I'm thinking about is, are you expecting each department to develop, this is sort of a generic goal setting session, and then they go off and work as a department to set goals? Or is there going to be some, are you going to use the select board goals as any kind of a framework? Or, how are you thinking about these sessions and the outcomes that you're looking for?
Well, I guess I'm going to leave it to Mark to conduct the training, but he's got a document that we're going to send out to participants this week that explains a little bit about how he envisions the training rolling out. My guess it would, go from the general to more general to more specific training. And, he intently wanted the groups to be, by subject matter areas, the land use and versus public safety and so forth.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a very good question that Barney asks, because the small meetings we've been having are focused around a commonality of purpose, right? So I think there's two different objectives, and they are complementary in my opinion. I think as a best practice, training, helping the professionals in town government think about their goals and their performance, and then to the degree they report to boards, having them report back and be evaluated. I mean, that whole thing is good. And in that small group meeting, I've referred to the school committee and the DESE system, which is codified through the Department of Education, as being a good practice in that. So that's good. And I think Mark understands that process fine, because he did it with us very well. the other agenda that I think maybe Barney's alluding to is in that process, what the GE folks used to call guided discovery, right? So you get them to kind of explore an objective that we want, which is to get the land use boards to coalesce around common things that they can do together. And I presume public safety would be the same, maybe town hall's the same, so that ultimately we can also use those, that kind of process and goal setting to streamline the whole process, make it more efficient and allow sharing of resources so that, you know, we can just be more efficient. We can just do it better, right? And I'm not sure has Mark been sort of coached on that?
No, not to this point. I mean, I think he could ensure that there's some intersection with the goals he developed for the board with the goal setting that he's.
Right. I mean, right. He has that background. I guess.
Yeah.
We're meeting Tim on Friday, right?
That's right.
So maybe, you know, maybe that's something we could discuss in Friday's meeting about, at least from our view, what that, you know, where that goes, and perhaps have a prep session with Mark just to kind of give him that extra. We don't need to, you know, he knows better than we do how to facilitate meetings and get agreement from different parties and all that. That's his job. So I don't in any way want to, you know, make it sound like we're trying to shortcut that, but giving him that overlay, in my opinion, would be useful.
Okay, I'll see if.
Kate, do you have a comment on that? Because you're part of this team.
I'm in total agreement with you though, because what we were finding in the land use talking in the small group is that it overlaps with the personnel and the goal setting and all this.
Right.
You know, inextricably bound. And so this, I agree that this should be not done in absent that context.
Right. So let's use Friday. That's a good thing. I mean, Friday, I already sent you a note, Tim, earlier today about the agenda for Friday. So this is a good item, I think, to chat about. And then I know very little about the public safety piece, but I'm guessing that's a rich territory for the similar kind of a process.
Okay. Do you want to see if Mark can make Friday, make that session for a little while, or want to set something up outside of that?
Yeah, I think outside of that, I think we need to prep, and we haven't met in 3 weeks, and
okay,
you know, there's a lot of housekeeping. I don't want to tie him up on that, but right after, you know, if we can agree, you're just sitting for me and Kate, but
yes,
you know, there's 6 other people involved. I don't want to speak for them. So.
And then do you see this, like, will you lay out some sort of time frame for departments sort of working with those that have a staff, or with their, you know, if they staff a committee, working with them to agree on a set of goals and bring those back to, I don't know whether they go back to Tim or they come to the select board, or, you know, what happens after these training days?
Well, then let me jump in on that, Barney. So I think this came out of this group that we're looking at, sort of the commonality of land use.
Yeah. Yep.
And the point, and I just made it again, you know, I come out of an environment, out of the school committee, where there's a very structured system where the that the board itself, as we did, as you recall, in the summer or whenever we did it, engage in a goal setting process, and that those goals flow to the top administrator, whether it's a George Mansfield, Linda, whatever. And then there, at least in the school world, there's a very structured goal setting, check-in and evaluation process that results in a evaluation of the superintendent annually. You know, those of you who are from school understand that. Now, we don't need to be nearly as structured as they go, but the basic process is not bad. It's like, okay, here are goals. Let's translate those committee goals into your goals, top administrator and your staff, if there is staff. And let's, you know, reduce those to some action items. And let's have a check-in and let's see how you did. I mean, it's, you know, it's basic sort of good
Yeah.
practice. So,
And,
so bringing just that to other areas of town government is a good practice.
yeah, absolutely.
The secondary piece, though, is in that process. If you bring, say, you know, in our case, in the case we're talking about, the Board of Health and the Conscom and the planning board together, and they find commonality in that process, it helps them understand that there are things that they could do together, or they could possibly share resources, or maybe they coalesce around, you know, a certain IT thing like the online permitting or whatever. And I'm just taking an example that they all agree is a good thing. And then that gives you more leverage to say that's something that should be a common goal and maybe even commonly achieved as a goal. So there's that, it's beginning that whole current of saying, let's take a re-examination of all the compartmentalized functions we have.
Right.
So it's a lot of stuff there. And I think, you know, Mark knows his piece, you've been through it, but what we're saying is, okay, let's begin to introduce this other thing. It's not going to be all in the first year, but it's beginning the process that says, okay, let's all get together and let's see what, you know, areas of common achievement we can get.
So it sounds like you are anticipating that the training happens, then there is a process of working with the relevant individuals around that topic to set goals, and then some way of bringing people back sort of to discuss across departments. You know, are there some shared goals? And then ending up with some kind of a written set of goals that those individuals, you know, those top staff people will be evaluated on. Is that right?
Well, again, I want to make it, from my view, I'm not driving the process, but from my view, if we just got to the point this year, you asked a question about schedule. So, you know, in the normal, say, school schedule, this whole process would have happened, you know, 2 months ago or a month ago. And then it would culminate in, of course, school goes in a very, you know, structured year. That's from
Right.
September to June, but that would result in an evaluation at the end of that year. And, you know, so we're not there, but you got to start somewhere. So if we simply this year, if we simply got people to think about their goals here in, you know, October, November, and by, you know, June, right when we're kind of changing over to the new fiscal year, if we evaluated those goals and started the process of setting new goals, that would be a win to me. I mean, that would just be at least getting people on a calendar of kind of looking at what you do in a 1 year and maybe a 3 year sort of plan. That's probably enough. I think the idea of facilitating this process like Mark is doing with common groups together is a little bit of an organic process that they just kind of have to hear from each other, like what's going on, and get a little more visibility into the commonalities. I wouldn't personally force that. It's too much in the first year. It's just the beginning of understanding that, hey, everybody kind of shares the same goals, and maybe there's some things we can do. You know, we talk about IT upgrade or whatever. Maybe there's some things we can together agree. And then now that comes back to select board and says, hey, 3-4 boards, 3-4 committees, professionals agree this is a top priority. It gives us, you know, some ammunition. The other thing I would say is there's an education of the boards, right? You know,
yes,
the boards are made up of volunteers, and sometimes they come from industry like I do. Sometimes they come from, you know, school like you do. Sometimes, you know, so they got a lot of knowledge, institutional knowledge from their own lives, but there's not, in my opinion, a very good board education that goes on here, you know, and we can make that better. You know, the boards should be saying, like, it's a very, I mean, I don't want to just drag this on too long. I'm blowing Alan's, you know, timetable here, but it's an important point that the administrators, the Georges and the Lindas, are in kind of an uncomfortable position because they report to the board and they meet with the board, but they also have a town hall function that reports up through,
Right.
Tim's. So getting some clarity and getting the boards engaged and saying, okay, these are the goals of our board. And then they at least have something they can build on, I just feel like, I think all of that is good. And it just, it's a good place to start. I don't want to make too much of it the way you're going. I don't want to make it overly. And I see John woke up here. So maybe John, you could think about what you do, in the police with your own goals.
Thing, though, this is also important for, it's for our entire operation of the whole town. Because when we are meeting with FinCom, for instance, and we are trying to direct FinCom and give them some direction as to what our priorities are for the budget, we need to know, we've been going in blind. We don't know what the goals are of the various other, departments are in advance. So how can we tell them, that we think that, we should put more, emphasis on this rather than that, or whatever, or even, so I think it's really going to be important all around, because it's going to open up communication. It's going to open up everything and make all of our decisions, I think, better decisions down the line.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a great effort. One just quite specific thing here about your list of people. I noticed that under town hall, you have the RecCom chair or member. Did you mean to include the director as well?
The director is the only employee of the department, so she doesn't have any employees to meet
Evaluate.
with, to evaluate, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
But wouldn't
She
she
would-
be integral to the goal setting for the
Yeah,
rec
she should
department?
go to the goal. She should go to the goal setting. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Well, she has to set her own goals, and then Tim, you're going to be the one that has to be evaluating her on it. So, I mean, this.
So she should go. I
Okay,
mean, it
all
should be the-
right, I'll talk to Holly. Yep.
Yeah, okay. And
But-
and then the other thing I wondered is, so, I mean, I know the FinCom does not have any particular staff, but are they, how do you view the FinCom in terms of their goals? Or
Well, they've got lots of staff. They've got Priscilla and Kimberly.
well, that's true. So shouldn't there be a FinCom person?
Yeah, that would be a good idea. I think
under town
Absolutely.
hall? Yeah,
Jim should go. Jim should go.
Be invited.
Well, but Kimberly doesn't work for the FinCom.
No, but she's actually on the FinCom, isn't she?
No.
She's a member of the FinCom.
No,
Uh,
I mean, in some sense, I believe we should include FinCom in our goal setting next year.
yeah.
FinCom works for us. That alliance between select board and FinCom is a pretty important linkage that I believe
Absolutely. I
maybe
agree.
next year we should take that up in the, in the summertime.
Yeah.
whenever we do it.
Yeah, but that's true of all the boards.
Well, all the boards, but that's the board that we were closest with. And planning board and health board and school board don't report to us. So, I mean, I do agree, we should have common goal setting things, but anyway. But Chief Fisher's there, and I just thought, John, do you have a process in your teams that do you set your own goals, and do you set goals for your staff? And do you have anything like that?
I set goals for the supervisors, and then it's I guess a piece of it's the goals and objectives at the police department tend to be things, projects, processes, lines of leadership, who's doing what this year and how are you doing with it, and how'd that compare with the person that did it before you. And then when we do the supervisors meetings, we talk about, all right, who are we training? Who's going to be responsible for other things, and how's that communicated to the officers? So yes, one of the things that is reflected in our evaluations is the is how they've done with those things. But one piece that's missing that is kind of the last piece of our evaluation is putting down action plans right when we do the evaluation. So I've got to we're adding that right now. That's part of our next thing. I mean, I can show you our evaluations and kind of our processes and show you a few years worth of people's evaluations if it would help. Excuse me
No,
while I
I'm
reach
not-
for the plug. But yeah, so in brief, yes, but I'm also anxious to hear what Mark Way has to say. And if we need to take a sharper look at this and basically
mean,
what I'm
there's-
missing and how I can make it better.
Yeah, I mean, there's your, sort of operational goals that you push down to your staff, but
Mhm.
there's kind of strategic goals. I mean, as the executive, I think you should have strategic goals that may flow from us, in fact, in terms of where do we want to take the town with a public safety outlook. And then there's coordination goals, with Brian, and I guess you guys share the communication function, right? But so, that would be, to me, kind of the more interesting part to come out of your exercise with Mark about what are the broader goals that we should be striving towards. We trust you to, manage your staff. What's the direction of public safety? What does public safety look like, in 2030 or whatever? That
Right,
kind of stuff.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I have those too, but I normally share those with the law enforcement liaison, whoever my liaison is with the board, and frankly with Tim. Excuse me for
Good.
plugging.
Thank you.
All right.
Did we conclude about the select board? Do you want just one member of the select board to go to the public safety session?
Well, no more than two, I'd say. That's probably.
Who's the liaison? Is that you, Kate?
I'm yes,
Well, Luke is fire and
yeah.
Kate, you're police, and I'm DPW, and I'm
Your library, aren't
in
you?
the library, yeah.
So I'd like to do the land use one.
Yeah, why don't Kate and I do land use, and then Luke and Barney, you can do the other one.
Public safety, is that gonna work for you, Luke?
Well, probably
But I
not.
could, I mean, I could
Probably
definitely do
not.
public
If not,
safety.
let me
I
know,
think.
Luke, and I will step in.
Okay, thank you.
You should be first, choice.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah.
If you
Yeah,
can't, I'll do it.
What about town hall? I mean, maybe Alan, you should go to that one.
Alan,
Well, I
definitely.
can. Yeah, I'm a lame duck, but I can
Yeah, but you
go to
should.
that. Yeah. I mean, I can at least represent the board there.
Yeah,
And if nobody else wants to be a second, I'd be happy to be a second there as well. That's Friday from 10 to 12. Okay, I have to look at my calendar.
Alan, you have 7 months to go. You're not really a lame duck.
yeah, you can't call yourself a lame duck yet.
Yeah.
Not like
Hey,
you.
and we may, if COVID is still going on, we may, have to extend your term for a while. So don't start backing out here.
And start by getting us back on schedule. since we've
Yeah,
been
well,
waiting.
I could do that if people would stop talking. But
These
All
are
right.
these are important
Appointments.
conversations, though. This is what gets us really forward.
No, this is a very important, I think, really strategic. I'm glad we're
It
doing it.
is.
Okay, appointments, cultural council. We have a nominee. May I have a motion?
Let me get it
So
up.
move.
I move to appoint Kenneth Seltzer of 145 Church Street, apartment C15, to serve on the Carlisle Cultural Council for a 3-year term to expire on June 30th, 2023.
And moved, we have a second.
Second?
Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor, roll call vote.
Arnold, I.
Oskalilo, aye.
Lewis, I.
Modell, aye.
Reed, I.
It's unanimous. we will notify Mr. Seltzer that he is now on the Cultural Council. Thank you. Right. Liaison reports. I submitted mine in writing, so I don't need to present it. Any other liaison reports?
I actually had a question about it, but I can't get out of the screen. I'm trying to find it. Just a second. So do you know anything about the restructuring ideas?
No, not yet. Well, I mean, very briefly, she's talking about reassigning some people who are already in the office to take on some of Angela's duties. And then obviously they'll hire somebody else. But the idea that, you know, you're not going to find anybody who'll put in the hours that Angela put in.
Yeah.
So it's going to have to be redistributed. But she's still talking about hiring a single person and then redistributing other duties.
All right.
Of course, some probably won't be done the same way either.
Yeah. All right. Actually, what I was wanting to respond to was number 6, where there's a Zoom meeting on accessory apartments being planned. And I wanted to say that while I was doing some investigations for the housing trust to find out if we had any money in an account, I discovered, in fact, I need to do some more research, because that we have $90,000 from a warrant article from 2000 and I think it was 6, which is why I don't have any more information about it, because I need to know how it's worded exactly. But from what I understand, it was meant to help people who wanted to put an accessory apartment in their house, help to finance this. So I am, Tim, if you wouldn't mind, I did leave a message for Jen, but I don't know how her mother is and if, you know, she's okay. But I need to know the wording of this article. And I think it would be
Okay.
germane to their Zoom conference, and they should probably get in touch with me or somebody before they have their Zoom thing about accessory apartments, so that, you know, we could add that information.
Okay, yeah, we'll track the vote down.
Would you please? And I
Sure,
can't
yep.
remember whether it was 2000. I have it in another notebook on something else I was working, but it's way back. I went online, and our annual things online, annual, you know, reports online didn't go that far back.
Okay,
And is
Yeah,
it,
is that money still there?
Yes,
Are you
It is.
sure?
I am. That's what.
For some reason, I thought,
Not only is the 90,000 there, but it's got $4,000 of interest.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, my cat just came in. Yeah, because I thought there was something that, because nobody used it, right? Is this the fund
Right.
that like nobody, okay,
Nobody used it. So, but that's why I want to find out how was it written.
yeah.
And maybe it needs to be re-advertised, because people don't know that I didn't know it was there. You know,
Yeah, no, this is something that came up a while ago because there was that accessory apartment thing at town meeting. Yeah,
anyway,
Yep.
I'm digging into it, and I think they, you know, COA should know about this as well. So that's that.
Okay, thank you.
Tim, is it Ann James that's still working on the accessory apartment meeting with the COA?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'll have to check that.
She had just been in touch, you know, last spring about that, representing the COA, and that they wanted to hold an informational meeting. So anyway.
Yeah, and they're trying to find, he's still trying to find out even where they are and who has them. So,
Yeah.
Oh, that they should be able to find that out from planning.
well, they haven't been able to find out. They think there's some that planning doesn't know about,
Oh, interesting.
But-
Okay,
I don't know. Anyway, they were going to follow up on that.
all right. But there's, okay. Then, so municipal facilities has continued to meet, and as you know, we are still struggling with the septic at the DPW. because we, we missed the deadline when we went out for rebid. So we'll have to probably wait till this spring for
Oh, really? Huh.
the septic. And I think Steve Hinton is meeting with the Board of Health now and seeing what we have to do about the septic system there. We talked about the priorities for the $300,000, and we thought we think the first priority is for replacing the chiller unit at the library, because we've been using, chlorofluorocarbons to recharge it every year, and it leaks. It leaked. We had to put 30 pounds in it this year, and we could possibly change it over to new product, but that would be an expense in itself. So we prioritize that as number one on our list for things to get done, and that will be moving ahead.
Will that leave money for number two?
It leaves a little money for, yes, that'll be around, well, we have to get the prices on it. We decided to do it that way, by the way. We're going to do a 1-for-1 exchange on that chiller, because that's the least expensive way of taking care of the problem. But it will not give us any upgrades for, all these technical terms, the VFCs and the this and the that's. But it would be a lot more money. If we wanted to be more energy efficient, we'd have to do a bunch of other things, and there's not room in their current utility area to put that in. So then that would mean that we'd either have to put a doghouse outside, and then that would be more expensive plumbing and new thising and thating. So what we decided to do was to talk to the trustees and tell them what our decision with our $300,000 was, how to spend, fix their problem with our budget, and to tell them there are other fixes that could be done, but if they want to look into more efficient, system and something else, they would have to kick in the other funds, or, do fundraising or participate in the purchase of that system.
Okay.
This fixes the problem, but it doesn't upgrade anything.
Thank you. Any other liaison reports? Hearing none.
Now we got a good one. Traffic Safety Advisory Committee. So you guys only saw a couple of emails about crosswalks. I probably received about 12. It's all of a sudden become a very popular thing. So we met yesterday, and long story short, a lot of the crosswalks in town, not the ones in the center now, but or directly in the center, but moving outward, a lot of those crosswalks are not properly sighted. They're line of sight is horrible in certain areas. Bingham Road one in particular, numerous people have emailed me about, and there's really no easy fix or inexpensive fix. So what we're going to look into is the possibility of doing a study to determine exactly, one, where are these sited and are they sited properly? And then also two, the signage and whatnot, which that would be appropriate, because one of the things that we discussed at our meeting is that, like the signs, the flasher signs that are out in front of 142 Bedford Road that are getting changed out, those no longer meet, and Chief, you can probably speak to this better than I can, but they no longer meet the standards for, is it federal standards or?
Yeah, federal, MUTCD.
Yeah, so the thing is, you move something that doesn't meet standards to a crosswalk, right, somewhere else in town trying to save a buck, and something happens, right, you kind of willfully, tried to go with the cheap fix. So, I'm not saying that we're gonna, have to spend $100,000 upgrading all the crosswalks with flashers and whatnot, but but there are some that are more heavily used now with COVID and kids not taking the buses. We will have a bit of a reprieve, I think, in the winter, but but at the end of the day, you know, we really need to kind of focus on improving some of them. You know, some of the easier ones, you know, like up by the school and whatnot, I think that's just repainting. You know, those are, you know, those are a little easier fixes. It's the ones that, you know, the one on East Street, which people drive through at about 50 or 60 miles an hour. Well, probably 40 miles an hour, right?
It's more than 25, I can tell you that.
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. You know, and I
That's
mean,
the one with
yeah.
the flasher. I've stood there with the dog a couple of times in the past couple of weeks, and I push the button. I even checked to see that the flasher is working, and cars have
Yeah.
blown right by me.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it's kind of a common thing, and you know, and as we always emphasize when folks come to the TSAC meetings, you know, there's a lot of responsibility of the individual crossing the street. You know, you can't just assume because the flashers are flashing that cars are going to stop. But you know, it's hard for kids to understand that. So, you know, we also discussed maybe having some sort of a educational thing at the school, you know, just really teaching kids about crosswalk safety and that sort of thing. But that'll be coming down the road. And then the other piece too is the garden club wants to do some work on the center island. You know, they want to put some pavers in, and they want to well, essentially they want to put some pavers in to make it with what they think is going to be a safe zone. Basically because cars come up and their trucks come up and run over the curbing. Anyway, I guess Allison Saylor was in there the other day, and she actually sent us a picture of where a truck came over. So they want to put like a 3 to 4 foot strip, if you will, around the outside, you know, pavers of some sort. They'll have to go to HISCOM, but at the end of the day, you know, we were talking about this the other day, you don't want it to match exactly, right? You don't want pavers, you don't want it to all blend together because that might be problematic. But, you know, that's something that, you know, will probably have to come to us for approval. And not necessarily a financial approval, but, you know, it's the work in the roadway. And then the last piece that folks wanted to bring up again is the stop sign at the intersection of Church and School. So that intersection, it's 3-way, right? Because Church is 1-way, but it's got 2 stop signs coming up Church and coming down School, but it doesn't have one going from the center to the school, right? And you know, we've had, I guess, a couple of months now of school and at least a couple of weeks of full-time in session. And you know, I drive that almost every day, not quite every day, but almost every day. And you know, I don't see any traffic backups, but what I do see is a lot of confusion at that intersection. And you know, we were talking with Vanessa Maroney. She's going to be on the committee now. We actually have to appoint her, I think, but the school has Jim O'Shea has asked her to participate in these traffic and pedestrian safety committees now as a school individual. And just a variety of other folks that have said, you know, it's confusing, right? So people stop, some people don't stop. The people that have to stop think the people that don't have to stop. So it creates this mess in the morning and in the afternoon. You know, I mean, it's not really an issue, obviously, when there aren't many cars going by, but the committee did want to bring up the idea that we do want to put a stop sign there. We think a stop sign would be a good idea. And then the other piece that went with that was the no through traffic from, I forget what the hours were, 7 to 9. That would prevent people from cutting up up School Street off of Church Street off of Westford School. Church? Yeah, Church, okay. Church Street up across Concord, off of Westford, up across Concord, and then down past the school. There is a significant amount of traffic now during, it's just jammed, right? Because you've got so many people trying to do pickup or drop off. You know, pickup Well, actually, pickup may even be worse now than drop off. Drop off seems to be a bit spread out. But you know, the hope is that no through traffic will keep, you know, the commuters from going that way. Chief, is there anything, or Tim, anything you guys want to add?
Yeah, we just thought we would put that sign on Westford Street, so it starts right there. Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess the idea would be that if people are coming off of Concord, right, they're likely going to the school, you know, not too many people necessarily cut up that way. So, yeah. So, just something to think for the next agenda, you know, if maybe to put it on the agenda to vote on it, and you know, we can get, the signs should be fairly inexpensive, but.
Well, if you send a report, then we can put it on the agenda.
Yeah.
What your recommendations are.
Yeah, we can pull that together. Yeah.
Okay, anything else? All righty, let's move on. Approval of the warrants. Barney's been busy spending our money.
Yeah, let me pull it up here so I
Next
can.
time, Barney, don't spend it all in one place, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, if we disagree with any of that, you're personally liable, right?
Don't scare her, come on. She's gonna
I think
quit signing, and then you'll have to go in.
That's right. You're the, yeah.
Well, you know, we signed that stuff the other day, the bonds, right?
Yes.
And out I came, you know, I went in, I was a good citizen, went in with my own pen, and I come out, I was the last one to sign. Peggy goes, "Did you sign in black pen?" I go, "Yeah." He said, she's like, "Oh," she goes, "Well, too late now." Nobody told me. So.
Yeah, they searched around for 5 minutes to find a blue pen.
Blue pen, yeah.
Really? Well, I ruined it at the end.
That's okay.
It's
I'm
gotta
sure
be
they'll
different.
know that it's an original signature, and they had enough people on it already, so.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
All right. Well,
All right, can I have a motion to approve warrant 2321?
So moved.
Second,
All in, roll call.
Arnold, I.
Oskalillo, aye.
Louis, I.
Modell, aye.
Did I?
I have a motion to approve warrant 2421.
So moved.
Second,
Roll call.
Arnold, I.
Oskalillo, aye.
Louis, I.
Modell, aye.
Did I?
Motion to approve 2521.
So
So
moved.
moved. Second,
Roll call.
Arnold, I.
Oskalillo, aye.
Louis, I.
Modell, aye.
Did I?
Approved. Warrant 2621.
So moved.
Second,
Arnold, I.
Oskalillo, aye.
Louis, I.
Modell, aye.
Did I?
Unanimously approved. Thank you. Approval of minutes.
I move we approve the minutes, unless somebody sent in some amendments.
I went through it fairly carefully and I did not find any need for amendments.
There was one, and I thought, you know, it just is not worth it, so.
Okay. So you're moving the approval of the October 13th minutes, correct?
As presented,
Thank
exactly.
you. Do I have a second?
Second,
Second.
Roll call vote.
Arnold, I.
Oskalillo, aye.
Louis, I.
Modell, aye.
Did I?
Thank you. Now we need a motion to go into executive session,
To return to open session?
not to return to open session.
Do we have that? Let me see. Hang on, I'm looking for my.
I move that the board enter an executive session pursuant to MGL 30A, subparagraph 21A, paragraphs 2, to discuss strategy with respect to bargaining with non-union employees, Chief Sorrows and Lieutenant Crow, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the town's bargaining positions, and that afterwards the board will not return to open session.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote.
Arnold, I.
Oskalillo, aye.
Louis, I.
Modell, aye.
Did I?
Thank you. We are now in executive session.